The following presentation is brought to you by the Realm Network.
Okay, everybody, welcome to this edition of Vixens Who Rule. And I have an independent star with me today as a guest. And I don't think she realizes it because she's smiling, but she's in very hot water with me.
Oh, no.
Me and her have a lot of things to talk about, even though we're just meeting for the very first time. This is the lovely Kimber Lee.
Yes.
How you doing, Kimberly?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Okay, now, I did have your partner on the show, Cherry Bomb.
Mm-hmm, I did know that.
But she was not in trouble with me like you're going to be. Listen, you're in huge trouble with me. But
no,
we're going to get to that in just a minute.
I have a guess.
Big time. But we're going to get to that in a minute. First, listen, I know very little about you. I got some notes, but a lot of times I like to bring my guests here. I just wing it, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk like we're two old girlfriends. Is that cool?
It works perfect for me.
Okay, now, Kimberly, the first thing that jumped out at me is, let me tell you this. I'm a Long Island boy, okay, but 8 years ago I moved to Colorado. Okay. And I always, for over 20 years, I wanted to move to Colorado, okay?
Okay.
You're the complete opposite of me because you were born and raised in a place that would probably be my second choice to live, and that's Seattle, Washington, right?
Yep. I'm actually in Seattle right now.
so now you were born in Seattle and raised in Seattle. Mm-hmm. But at some point, you found your way to Philadelphia. So you and I kind of did the flippity-floppity. How did you wind up in Philadelphia?
I actually wound up out there for school. I have a degree in dance education on top of all this wrestling. I'm a dancer, too. Been dancing ballet for 23 years now. So, that's how I ended up out there, college. I went to the University of the Arts.
But you're back living in Seattle now.
No, I actually still live in Philadelphia. I just happen to be visiting Seattle right now. So,
well, I got to ask you this, Kimberly, and be honest with me. Listen, I'm a New Yorker through and through, and I lived there, for like the first 35 years of my life. I left because I went to go work for the WWE, so I had to move to Connecticut. But living in Colorado now for the last 8 years, I got to tell you, I wouldn't trade this in for the world. Now, I've been to Washington a couple of times, and obviously I know Philadelphia. And I got to be honest with you, no disrespect to people who live in Philly. I've got a lot of friends in Philly, but it's got to be two different worlds. You don't favor Philly over beautiful Seattle, Washington, do you?
I definitely miss Seattle all the time. This is my home through and through. It's why I have to come back all the time because I'm like, I need Seattle. But Philly's a good location for wrestling right now, so that's kind of why I've planted there. But who knows? I could move anywhere, really. I'm young, and now's the time to move around, and who knows where I'll end up.
Well, that's depending on, if you stay healthy or not, and we're gonna get into that a little later on, Kimberly. Yeah. I don't want to break the mood here. But Kimberly, are you telling me is there no wrestling scene in Seattle?
When I was younger, growing up here, I wasn't allowed to watch wrestling when I was a kid. So there's points where I didn't even get to see what was going on with WWE. But so. As far as independents go, I really had no idea. Since starting wrestling and doing stuff on the East Coast, I've heard of ones here and there, but from what I understand, the athletic commission is pretty difficult in Washington State, so that's why there's not a lot of wrestling shows here.
Now, Kimberly, is that a flower in your hair?
Yes.
Do you usually wear that, or was that put in especially for me in this interview?
This one is the first time I've ever worn this flower in particular.
So
that one's special for you, but I do wear a flower every day.
I like the flower look. Now, where did you get that flower look from?
I like pinup girls a lot. That's kind of why I started wearing flowers. So I just
now when you say pinup girls, you're not talking about like the Betty Pages and people.
Oh yeah, I think Betty Page is awesome.
Now, Kimberly, I hope you don't mind me saying, but you're only 25 years old. How the heck would you know about Betty Page?
my good parents. They raised me right. I know about a lot of older stuff.
Oh, that's good. So you know a lot of old school stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, Kimber, I find this fascinating. Now, you said, see, I pick up things as you go along. People have called me the Oprah of podcasting, just so you know. So I pick up little things as you go along. Now, the two things I picked up were you went to school back east for dance, and you've been doing ballet for 23 years.
Correct.
Now, here's the thing. Like I used to tell young wrestlers wanting to break into the business this all the time. I used to tell them, and it's the same with writers in wrestling. Listen, I'll be honest with you. I don't know. I tell people all the time, I don't know if you'd want to make this a career choice, and it has nothing to do with how good you are or, dampening your hopes and dreams. Let's face it, there's very few opportunities to make it and make a good living in the wrestling business. But I would have to think, Kimberly, that's the same when it comes to dancing.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
It might even be worse, honestly.
Yes. So my question would be this. When you go to college for dancing, right, what is it that you really want to do when you graduate college? What's the game plan?
It depends. For me, I went for the educational degree because I kind of looked at it a little bit more realistically and was like, look, the odds, especially because it's the exact opposite of wrestling where there's way too many girls who dance. There's like 1 million of us and there's like 3 boys and they all get jobs. But the girls, it's like you're 1 in 1 million. It doesn't matter. They can replace you in 2 seconds. So I looked at it more realistically and was like, I know I'm a good teacher and I know I'm a good choreographer, so I'm going to get the teacher degree. And that probably was the better way to go because you also had the option to get a performance degree where you focused on taking classes and getting yourself ready to get a professional job. But even then, when you do, most dance jobs don't pay. Like, I know my dance mentor, when he was working in a professional company, didn't even make $25,000 a year. So, like, you're still doing other stuff on top of it. The parallels between dance and wrestling are pretty crazy when you start to look at it.
So when you talk about like a teaching degree, does that really equate to like opening your own school?
I had to take a lot of business classes. I had to do 175 hours of student teaching myself through my senior year. Some of which was with like special populations. My favorite classes to teach were the senior citizens I taught. We would teach them things like the Beat It dance and like it was great. They were adorable. But and I also taught from there. I taught all the way down to like 1 and 2 year olds, and they were super cute too. Those two levels, though, like really old, really young, very similar ways to teach them. It was cool getting to see all that. And
yeah, I try. When I was at WCW, there was a vignette where Ernest the Cat Miller was trying to teach senior citizens how to dance, and it didn't work out too well for the cat. He didn't have the patience I would think one would need, Kimberly, to teach senior citizens.
Yeah.
Now, Kimberly, I've never said this publicly. I've never admitted this to anybody before. I'm a big fan of Dance Moms. I watch Dance Moms. I really watch Dance Moms. Now, you could tell me. I'm sure you watch the show.
Oh, yeah.
Is that accurate, or is it really blown out of proportion?
It's blown up a little bit, but there are moms like that. Like my mom wasn't a stage mom. My mom, rather than my mom loved doing my hair and makeup for shows when I was little and making me her little princess. And she would help. She would volunteer and stuff too. But there were some moms who were like right there every practice watching, like, my daughter needs to do this and this. And I knew girls who had like ballet rooms built in their house, like craziness. So some of it is actually kind of accurate, and the teaching and getting yelled at and the stress of the rehearsals and like getting talked down to, there are some teachers like that. Abbey Laith is a real force.
Yeah, and me and my wife go back and forth all the time because like my wife really doesn't like Abbey Laith, and she thinks Abbey Laith's tough on the kids. And I'm sitting there, I watch Abbey Laith, and I say, and you tell me how you feel about this. I say, I think when the kids are older, they're going to be very grateful to having somebody like Abbey Laith in their lives. The way she teaches them discipline and expects the best out of them. I think when those girls are old enough to understand, they're going to appreciate it. Do you agree with that, or is she way too hard on the little girls?
Oh no, I had teachers that were just as hard on me. Like, just you're never late. You're expected to have your hair on point. You're going to be there with your stuff. You're going to work as hard as you can. Don't talk during class. And if you do, you get kicked out. Like, it was really strict for me too. So I totally understand it. And I appreciate every single one of my teachers for that, because I've learned good etiquette and other things in life.
Now, Kimberly, did you ever think that in your wildest dreams you were going to be sitting down with Vince Russo having a conversation about dance? Did that ever cross your mind?
No, this is one of those moments where you sit back and you go, my life, that we're doing this right now.
We're doing it right now. I'm talking about dance like I'm a girly man. I have no problem with that whatsoever. Now, this is what I caught, too. I know you're 25, and you kind of threw in there, I've been dancing for 23 years. I've been doing ballet. You've been doing this since you were 2 years old. Now, I have to ask you this, Kimberly, because, listen, if you started doing this at 2 years old and you've continued to do it for 23 years, either one or two things had to take place. I think I know which one it is, but I want to make sure. Either you really had to love this, I mean, just absolutely love it, or, you know, let's face it, a lot of times early in age, like parents, you know, force their kids to do certain things, you know, take the piano lessons, play soccer, join Cub Scouts, you know, and a lot of times the kids hate it. But you immediately at that young an age, you loved it that much?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if when I was that young I really knew, but my whole life my mom I was lucky, and she had put me in everything. I at one point was dancing, playing soccer, baseball, swim team. I was a diver. So I did everything and had no free time all at once. And every time my mom would go, okay, it's getting to be too much, you need to pick something, I always picked dance. And so it really was my choice, and I really did love it that much. And like, I don't get to take class and do it as much as I'd used to anymore, just with the way my life has changed, but I still love it just as much as I always did.
So Kimberly, do you still actively do it?
Every once in a while I go take a class, probably once a month or so.
And it really is ballet, the whole toe thing on the toes. I mean, it's really...
I haven't been on Pointe in a few years, but yeah, I've done lots of Pointe work. I've done Nutcracker, Swan Lake, Sleeping Beauty, Giselle, all of it.
That's what it's called, Pointe work. See, I never knew that. You just taught me that. Now, does that hurt?
Yes, because realistically, like, look at your feet and see how they line up. Some people have one big toe that's longer than all their toes. Some people are lucky and have two toes that are the same size. Some people are really unlucky and their middle toe is longer than their big toe. And that's all you're dancing on, is that one or two toes. And that's all your body weight.
Well, so that's interesting. So in other words, no matter how long you do it, even if you've been doing it for 23 years, no matter how long you do it, it still hurts.
Yep. It still hurts.
That's absolutely. I mean, I can't believe I'm sitting here talking dance with you. But hey, I'm interested, Kimberly. I'm interested in you, and what I'm doing is I'm buttering you up because you're going to get.
I know. I'm so scared.
You're going to get the ruler. You're going to get the ruler when we get to the end of this interview. Okay, now talk to me about this. Here is a ballerina. You even said it here, and I saw it on your Twitter. At times you call yourself the princess. Here's a little princess getting on point, hurting her toes.
Yes.
How the heck does that transition into professional wrestling?
You know, it was always something I liked when I was a kid. Even when I wasn't allowed to watch it, I would put it on TV real fast, and if my mom came in my room, change the channel. I had a couple friends who always had it on. So, I mean, I did always love it and always try to watch it, and people like Lita and China and Ivory are ones that just stuck out to me as a kid, and I had no idea how you got to WWE, because all I ever saw was a little bit here and there, and so it was just kind of this thought in the back of my mind my whole life. But then when I moved to the East Coast and came out here for college to dance, I ended up working in a haunted house in South Philly called Fright Factory. That's right next to the ECW arena. They're like attached. And I had friends who were wrestlers and kind of crossed over because they worked the haunted house too. And I ended up going to a show and meeting the right people to talk through, because I trained at a CZW, so I ended up actually meeting DJ Hyde just from going to a show with a friend, and got into a conversation about training, and here I am. And I went for it, because it was always something I was like, I would want to do that, but I have no idea how, and it wasn't accepted in my house, so I just never asked. And then
okay, I want to ask you two questions. I got to write down the second one because I'll forget. The first question is, why weren't you allowed to watch it early on? What issue did your parents have with it?
I think just the violent. My mom thought it was too violent, and at that time when I was younger, it was kind of the Attitude era too, so it wasn't very PG. There was some stuff my mom was like, my little kid doesn't need to see that. So I think that was part of it. I was pretty sheltered growing up. Not a bad thing.
Did you have any brothers and sisters?
I do. I have a younger brother. He just turned 18. So
now was he a wrestling fan as well?
No, he never really. He's more like the video game nerd. He just never really got into it.
Okay.
I was always the sporty one.
Now, Kimberly, I'm going to ask you this question, and I think this question is very poignant when it comes to women breaking in the business. And you're only 25 now, so how old were you when you started training?
I was 19.
Okay, let me ask you this. I think this is very important for people watching this interview, and especially, girls in high school now that, I talk to a lot of women, like you, and the love started in high school. They graduated from high school. They wanted to be wrestlers. Now, listen, I know a lot of wrestling schools and people that run wrestling schools, and I know with a lot of them, like if they get a student in, they know there's no way, no how the student is ever going to become a wrestler. But, rather than tell them that up front, it's a business, so they'll take their money to go through training.
Right.
So I wanted to ask you now, at that young age that you were in, being a female, like, how did you know a couple things? First of all, how did you know the guy, who taught you about, hey, you want to do this, you want to train? Number one, how did you know he wasn't hitting on you? And number two, like, how did you know, okay, listen, I'm just going to take your money, but you're really not going anywhere or going to make a name for yourself in this business? Like, how did you know that?
I mean, I had a lot of good people that were there, honestly, when I first started. Like, a lot of my influence is from Drew Gulak. He's, I would say, probably one of my biggest trainers. And right from the beginning, even when I came and did the tryout, like, I could just because from dancing too, I could kind of see that they're like, oh, I wasn't expecting her to be able to do that. Or like I would come in and when they were teaching me like the simple basic things that you learn in the beginning, I picked up pretty fast just because I picked things up quick from dancing my whole life. I'm a very visual learner and I can learn physical movements. And I don't know, I could just tell that they saw potential in me and that I won't necessarily say that DJ Hyde wasn't hitting on me when I started training, because he definitely was. But, I mean, I also have self-respect and shut that down very quickly and was very much like, no, I'm here to train. I want to learn how to do this. Like, and that's why I'm here. And they respected that, which...
Well, that says a lot, Kimberly, because some girls would never say that. And also, on the other side, some guys would never accept that. So I think that says a lot about the both of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm not to say that like there aren't persistent guys or whatever, and wrestling has a bunch of dogs in it, but that's life too. You gotta have your own standards for yourself,
Now, Kimberly, this is real interesting to me because I never knew anybody with a dancing background get into wrestling. So how did that help you? How did the years of the dancing experience, how did that help you in wrestling?
Oh my gosh, footwork, physical ability when I came in, flexibility, partnering work and dance is just like doing moves together in wrestling. I had endurance already, like that, just so many ways. And like being able to look at somebody do something and be able to copy. Like I got that really quick because that's what I've always done for dance. You watch somebody do something and you copy it.
So Kimberly, let me ask you this now. Has wrestling taken priority over dance now as you look to the future?
Honestly, it has. It's kind of, if I could make wrestling the one thing I do every day, that's what I would want. I feel like dance never would have panned out for me as far as performing goes. I was just because I was good and I made it to college and did all that, but the level of talent that is in the dance scene for women and how many women there are, I can still be a teacher and I can still pass on everything I know, but as far as I would have wanted to go performing, probably wasn't going to happen. But within that, I think the blessing was that I did find wrestling, and it's something I really connect with, and I still have that performance aspect, but I also get to be like this badass and like it's this whole other side of me I never really got to express through dance that I love too. It's taken over a lot of things for me in a good way.
Oh yeah, it's just funny to me that you basically say like well it's tough to make it at that level, this, that, and the other thing, and I'm just sitting here thinking, like, with 23 years of experience, though, like, you've got to be one of those, no?
You've got to. You have to be in like a genetic freak almost at this point to get a job as a female in dance. Like, I mean, as far as ballet goes, I wouldn't be a ballet dancer. I didn't have the feet for it, and that's a genetic thing. Like, there's nothing I could do. Modern dance, I probably would have had a better shot, but I wanted to be in one of the top companies, and that it's just probably not going to happen.
Well, but in other words, if you become the first wrestler on Dancing with the Stars, you could take it all.
Yeah, I could. Very nice. Let's do it.
Very nice. Okay, now Kimberly, let's get into the wrestling a little bit. Now, I read that one, and you mentioned it here. One of your greatest influences was China. Is that true?
Yes, that is true.
What was it about her?
I always liked that she stood up to everyone, boys, girls, it didn't matter. She fought right along with the boys. I loved it. I just loved that part about her.
Now, in talking to you and, you making that statement about China, here you were the ballerina, the princess, but I'm also getting like, were you a little tomboyish at the same time?
I've always been a tomboy.
But it doesn't seem like those two go together.
I know, it doesn't at all. I have very girly things about me. Like, I like doing my hair. I wear flowers. Like, I like makeup. But then there's some things where I'm just not girly at all. I don't know.
So then what kind of a girl were you in high school? Were you the girl, hanging out with the guys, being one of the guys laughing it up? Or were you was it the dancer side? Were you?
Oh, I was actually with all the band musicians, like right. Hanging around with the kids trying to be in rock bands and going to their shows and packing in their amps and stuff with them. Because my best friend is a drummer, still is to this day. We've been friends for 12 years now. And I've been to like every evolution of him being in a band. I've seen him from being really terrible to now he's really, really good, and that's where I was. I was like the punk rock kid.
Now, I'm going to ask you this because you said you had some older influence, your parents, Betty Page. What's some older influence in music that you liked?
Oh, I mean, I'm going to sound like I definitely came out of Seattle right here. I love Nirvana. I love Jimi Hendrix. I love Pearl Jam, Audioslave, Soundgarden, like all of the, like that, Tad, Mudhoney.
Well, so you know what? So Kimberly, you were in Seattle when that grunge was really happening, right?
Yeah.
Were you too young at that age, or did you
I
know?
Was. Kurt Cobain died when I was 4, so.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that still the music scene in Seattle?
Oh yeah, you still come here and everybody's got flannel and ripped up jeans and
still the same thing.
Yep.
Listen, Kimberly, what do you think about this? I had the bassist of the Go-Go's, Kathy Valentine.
That's awesome.
Follow me on Twitter a couple weeks ago.
That's awesome.
And has agreed to come on this show.
That's awesome.
I'm just throwing that out there because I think that makes me a pretty big deal. But okay, Kimberly, we got to talk about this wrestling thing because I don't even know where this. So now you got to know. When I get upset, like what I do, sometimes to keep my composure, I'll hit my head against the mic like that. So, just so you know, that's me trying to gain my composure. Okay. All right. Now, you work for a company regularly in Philly, correct?
Yes.
What's the name of that company again?
Or Philly? Or not in Philly. I work for the two companies I work for most regularly are Chikara and Beyond.
Chikara and beyond.
Yes,
Now,
Chikara.
what about I thought you were working for Shimmer as well.
Oh, Shimmer. Yeah, Shimmer's out of Chicago.
Okay. All right. Now, what company were you working for when this incident took place? And there's only one.
That's all you gotta say.
Yeah, there's only one incident you and I are going to talk about.
Yes, that was for Beyond Wrestling in Providence, Rhode Island.
And you still work for them?
I do.
So you're gonna be PC during this rant, correct?
Yes, I'll be honest.
You're going to be honest.
I'll be honest.
Absolutely honest.
Absolutely honest. That's what I am. I'm an honest girl.
Kimberly, let me give you a little bit of a background. So I want you to understand where my emotional tie is to this. This isn't an act. This is something I saw that really, really affected me. And I got to give you a little bit of a background so you understand. Okay?
Absolutely.
First of all, I've been the biggest advocate on the planet from day one for women in wrestling. I love tough women. And working at WWE, WCW, TNA, working around all the women, it was a very sexist world. The guys didn't like when the girls got over. The girls were kept down, and the girls would do everything they could to keep their spot, go out there, work harder than the guys because they knew they were the underdog in the wrestling business. And the guys don't want to hear this, but as a writer and a guy that makes a living on ratings, the women always outdrew the men. Always. They always outdrew the men in the ratings. And it even got to the point that the knockouts at one point became so popular in TNA that when I was writing for a while, there was 2 knockout matches every TNA show because they outdrew the guys. But with the women, it's always an uphill battle. But as a writer, one of the things that was great for me was, the girls always felt they always had to prove themselves, and, they were in a man's world. So when I used to work with them, they were not difficult at all. A lot of times they would follow directions, do, what I asked them to do. And that's why a lot of them got over. Because, I'm a writer. I'm on the outside looking in. My job is to get you over. Mm-hmm. A lot of times with these wrestlers, it's ego and it's pride, and they know more than the writer knows. And, a lot of times that works against them because they're only seeing things one way. The girls were so open to everything, and that's why the majority of them got over. Okay? Now, one of the most talented girls I've ever worked with, and they were all super talented, but one of the ones I absolutely fell in love with at WCW was Daphne.
Mm-hmm. Daphne is one of my favorite people on this.
She works at Shimmer, doesn't she?
Shine is where I see.
I always get why do they have to have such similar names?
I don't know. Why are they all glitter related?
Why do they all glitter? I mean, there's 2 women organizations, Shine, Shimmer. You'd think somebody would come up with a different name.
And the pre-show is Sparkle.
It's ridiculous. All right, so have you met Daphne?
Daphne is one of my favorite people on this planet. I love her to death.
I love her to death. A sweetheart of a girl. I love her
every single day. I
love this girl.
Hi.
Yeah, I love this girl. She knows I love her, right? Okay. At TNA, there was a match. And I don't know everybody that was involved. I know Abyss was involved. I think Raven was involved. You know what match I'm talking about?
I believe I do, yeah.
I know Raven was involved. I know, I think Mick was involved. Mick Foley was involved. I believe Raven was involved, and Daphne was involved. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'll never forget watching the show on a monitor, because people don't understand, Kimberly. As a writer, they think like the writer lays out the matches. Mm-hmm. Writers don't lay out matches. We basically say this is what we need as a finish so we can get to the next chapter. And the agents and the boys lay out the matches.
Right.
So when I'm watching a match, I don't know what the body of that match is. I don't know, So I was watching this one particular match. I know it was a pay-per-view. And I saw Daphne just take this hellacious bump. And you got to understand something. Guys will do whatever they have to do to get over. I got it. Listen, I'll be honest with you. Not too long ago, I got into it with Bubba because did you see that spot Dixie took?
I did, yeah.
I went absolutely ballistic. First of all, she's a female. She's like 125 pounds. Second of all, it was the first bump she's ever taken in her life. Third of all, I knew she was going to go into it scared stiff, and if you're scared, the chance of hurting yourself is multiplied by 1,000,000.
Way more.
I also knew Bubba was doing it to get himself over. I mean, like, that's why all the guys do it. That's why they did it with the spot with Daphne, to get themselves over. So, I threw so many red flags at that. Bubba got hot at me. Even Dixie got hot at me. At the end of the day, she wound up breaking 2 bones in her back. Mm-hmm. I sat there and I watched the Daphne spot, and I was scared to death. So right away, I'm waiting for her to come on the other side of the curtain, and I had to take it easy because I knew she was hurt. I knew she was in shock. I knew she was afraid.
Pro Wrestling's history class is now in session with Back to the Territories. Join host Jim Cornette and J.J. Dillon as they explore Mid-Atlantic wrestling.
Sitting there with his hands like this was Jim Crockett Sr.
3.5 hours of wrestling history told through rare memorabilia and exclusive footage.
Nothing topped Wahoo McDaniel and Johnny Valentine.
Featuring over an hour of lost Mid-Atlantic film footage from Jim Cornette's collection.
The kid from Minnesota. It was going to be something. Ric Flair.
Head back to Mid-Atlantic Wrestling at shootinterviews.com.